Rich Eisen addressed the armchair analysts and online critics head-on. Shedeur Sanders just received his opportunity, and the backlash arrived immediately. Eisen responded with a clear, point-by-point case explaining why the criticism misses the mark. If you thought Shedeur's rise was rapid, Eisen's analysis puts it in proper context. Here's what he laid out on air.
Already speaking in Cleveland high schools.
Weekend after, flying out immediately to get to work.
But his character's terrible, right? You know, and listen, oh, he interviewed bad, you know. According to who? The New York Giants? No offense, Bert. The same New York Giants that gave Daniel Jones a huge contract and let Saquon Barkley out the door. That's the intel we're trusting here?
That was for him to celebrate. He just made, I mean, look, he put in work in college. He had the privilege of being coached by his father.
Which we all would love and do.
Turned around not one, but two programs in college football. And then literally for any athlete, being drafted at the highest level is a success story in itself.
Rich Eisen delivered a direct response to the critics. He addressed the online claims reducing Shedeur Sanders to Deion Sanders' son instead of evaluating him as a quarterback on merit. Eisen challenged those assumptions and refocused the discussion on performance, preparation, and opportunity.
Say Kenny Pickett had strained his hamstring. Shedeur, they say his first day in pass, 9 for 9, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. They were just hating on this young guy.
Within minutes, Rich Eisen delivered a structured breakdown, addressing each claim with evidence and dismantling weak narratives through clear analysis. He replaced speculation with data and kept the focus on what matters: decision-making, accuracy, leadership, preparation, and game management. The reality is simple. Shedeur Sanders was not given this opportunity. He earned it through performance and consistency against real competition. He accepted the role, met the standard, and handled the moment with professionalism and urgency. No shortcuts, no favors, just results and readiness. Eisen's point was direct. Evaluate Shedeur on his work, not assumptions, and acknowledge that he has justified the opportunity on the field.
I've done it at 2 locations already, so it's simple. So that's why when people say I'm not, you know, one of the top quarterbacks or the top quarterback, because what are y'all going based off of? Because I did it year after year after year, and you see the progression. So it's like, obviously it got to be some type of external hate that you have for the family, for the last name, for anything, because I know I proved myself.
While many were still debating whether he was NFL ready, Shedeur Sanders stepped onto the practice field and operated like a clear QB1, setting protections, controlling tempo, and executing the plan. The narrative that he is just flash, media attention, or his father's influence does not hold up against his work in installs, progressions, and situational drills. What he showed was composure, efficiency, and command of the offense. He processed quickly, protected the football, and delivered on-time throws, demonstrating preparation and control.
I'm a firm believer. If I wanted Shedeur Sanders at 2, at worst at 33, of course I already think that he's better than other quarterbacks. Because that's the type of talent, that's where I would have picked him at. And if he was at 2 or 33, and he still had this same exact skill set, we would be talking about him starting and playing.
Right. Well, there'd only be 3 quarterbacks.
It'd be 3 quarterbacks, not 4.
Yeah.
But since he moved to the 5th round, that's cool. They might have to go along with it. But to me, I think if you ask who got the best tools, I'm going with Shedeur Sanders.
From the first day of camp, he was not there to get by. He arrived to lead. There was no hesitation in installs, no lapses in fundamentals, just precise timing, clean footwork, and consistent velocity to every level of the field. He managed protections, controlled cadence, and delivered in situational work, showing command rather than learning on the fly. The approach was efficient and disciplined, with attention to detail and progressions and ball placement that reflected preparation, not improvisation. At the same time, Rich Eisen addressed the narrative directly and backed it with evidence. He laid out clips, context, and performance markers to cut through speculation. Eisen emphasized that Shedeur Sanders did not step into this moment because of publicity. He built toward it through sustained work, resilience, and results. The background, media readiness, high football IQ, and a professional approach was developed over years, not days, and it translated to immediate operational control of the offense. The resistance came from familiar places. Some in the traditional guard still framed mobile quarterbacks as limited and expected the nepotism label to define him. That view did not hold up against what was on the field: composure under pressure, secure decision-making, accurate throws into tight windows, and consistent execution in red zone and 2-minute sequences. Eisen's point was clear: evaluate Shedeur Sanders on performance and readiness. The evidence shows he earned the opportunity and is meeting the standard with accountability and consistency.
Yeah, teams didn't draft him because they didn't think he was first-round talent. And the quote we played and that's on the screen, I think is flatly wrong. We all know this shouldn't have happened. Yes, it should have. It should have happened because this wasn't. Now, again, teams can be wrong. The league as a whole can be wrong. Hell, the Baltimore Ravens drafted a 25-year-old tight end before they drafted Lamar Jackson in the same draft. The die is not cast on who Shedeur Sanders.
He stated it plainly. This is not a celebrity appearance. This is a quarterback with pocket presence, leadership, and decision-making that stands on its own. You either show it or you settle into a backup role. Shedeur Sanders is not auditioning. He is establishing himself as the starter. When the opportunity arrived, whether through injury, trade, or depth chart changes, Shedeur was prepared and delivered. He did not hesitate. He executed the offense and finished drives. As others tried to catch up to what they were seeing, Rich Eisen reinforced the same message he has been repeating: evaluate the work. Camp reports have been consistently positive, but the important shift is how the performance is being received. Casual attendees who came to observe left talking about Shedeur's command and poise. Detailed observers focused on his pre-snap reads, protection checks, and audibles, highlighting the mechanics, timing, and ball placement that support efficient, controlled play.
What it is that they're doing is they're treating Shedeur Sanders like a fifth-round pick. Right? We're not covering every fifth-round pick in the NFL hoping that he gets an opportunity to be the starter on day one. We felt like, oh my goodness, they got a diamond in the rough. Shedeur Sanders fell to the 5th round. They felt like they evaluated him there, and that's where they picked him. And they're playing the guy that they picked in the 3rd round over him because they evaluate him at a higher level than what they do Shedeur Sanders. And I get it.
The Cleveland Browns are once again creating problems of their own. Their latest misstep centers on Shedeur Sanders. Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky have both noted that Cleveland is repeating the same mistakes. The team spent valuable draft capital and is now undermining that investment. This reflects a persistent issue in the organization's decision-making. It's not just a football decision, it's a pattern of self-inflicted setbacks.
Habits and some of the traits that we saw show up in college were very prevalent this past weekend against the Rams. Holding onto the football, catching the snap and not reading the defense, kind of evaluating what the defensive line is doing, and then trying to see if you can go make a play, and that's the concern. Okay, it's 1st and 10. They want a play-action double move at the bottom of the screen. The route doesn't win, and then the protection breaks down a little bit. You're taught as a young quarterback, protection breaks down, find the closest check down. It's right there, it's 1st and 10. He gets to like the 4th part of the...
The Cleveland Browns have long carried a reputation for instability. Even when it appears they are turning a corner, the organization finds a way to create new problems. Momentum gives way to questionable decisions and progress stalls. The latest situation centers on Shedeur Sanders. It highlights recurring issues in leadership, planning, and execution. Instead of establishing a clear path forward, Cleveland risks undermining its own investment.
There's a lot of players who feel like they should have been picked at a certain spot, should have been viewed in a certain way. But when you get on these teams, it's about developing the team, not doing what's individually best for a certain player. And that's what Kevin Stefanski has to do. And I get it. We want to say all the reasons why what's happening to him isn't right. But maybe we aren't right on the way that not only the entire NFL viewed him, but now the Cleveland Browns view him as well.
Shedeur Sanders was not brought in to be a placeholder or a scapegoat. He is expected to be the long-term solution, a high-upside quarterback with the tools, poise, and Sanders' pedigree to elevate the roster. The focus should be on developing him and positioning him to lead the team forward.
They sabotaged it. They rigged it against him today, putting him in with 3rd and 4th stringers, 5th stringers. You got no shot at quarterback. They threw him in because they didn't want him to make any more splash and put any more heat on Stefanski. It's a desperate, dangerous situation in which he's got no shot, man. He's throwing to Sal freaking Canella. What? But he got sacked 5 times because he's hanging on the ball trying to make a play, and nobody can separate. Then it comes down to a couple of minutes are left, and Shedeur tries to go on the field, and Stefanski puts Tyler Huntley in place of him. Excruciating to watch.
Shedeur Sanders brings accuracy at all levels, steady leadership, and the kind of composure that comes from handling pressure. Fans were energized, and the league was paying attention. For once, Cleveland had a credible source of hope at quarterback, then the familiar pattern returned. Instead of committing to a clear development plan, first-team reps, stable direction, and a defined timeline, the Browns introduced uncertainty and slowed his progress. Rather than building around him and giving Shedeur a direct path to lead, they split priorities and sent mixed signals. The result is momentum stalled at the very point it should be accelerating.
I also can't blame anybody who says, I don't necessarily trust this coaching staff to develop a quarterback or to evaluate the quarterback position. They have made some really oddball decisions at this position over the last several years, and I don't blame anybody for questioning, do these guys actually know what they're doing?
I don't think that's unfair at all. The thing that I would say is that they're desperate. They're very desperate. Like the entire organization is desperate. And if you really think they're going back to the coaches' offices and all getting around the table after session.
This wasn't about scheme or play design. It was a pattern of mismanaging a young quarterback. From the start, the signs were clear. Shedeur Sanders arrived at camp without priority first-team reps or the confidence-building snaps a rookie need. Instead of a defined development plan, he was asked to compete from behind, treated like a depth option rather than a long-term starter. The message was earn it later rather than build it now. When game action came, he was put on the field with limited preparation. Protection was inconsistent, and the play calling did little to ease his transition, more a stress test than a structured debut. The approach emphasized survival over progression, creating conditions where mistakes were likely and growth was harder to achieve. Analysts Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky highlighted the same points. The issues reflected organizational choices, not a shortfall in Sanders' ability. This was not a rookie collapsing under pressure. It was a franchise failing to provide the support, reps, and clarity required for a first-year quarterback to succeed.
Shedeur moves slowly, kind of trying to see what's going on, and then that creates that sack fumble. So a lot of the stuff that we just saw in college is a big deal. This ball gets snapped at the 48-yard line. Defense has won the rep. Play is dead. Throw the ball away. It's first down. But instead we run and it's a 2.5, 3-yard loss. So instead of being 2nd and 10, we're 2nd and 13, we're dead. Again, here's the opportunity to throw the juke route. Hold, scramble. So some of those things that I was and others were concerned about on the college tape showed itself again. This is not the end of the world, though. This is part of his development.
Cleveland managed to take a highly promising rookie and within weeks put him in a position where he looked unprepared. Ryan Clark called out the core issue. A first-year quarterback cannot succeed without protection, clear situations, and a controlled environment. Dan Orlovsky added that when a young quarterback isn't given structure, support, or coherent schemes, you're not evaluating ability, you're manufacturing failure. That's what happened to Shedeur Sanders. Browns fans weren't just disappointed with the results, they were alarmed by the process. This is a fan base familiar with quarterback missteps, yet even they recognize the pattern. A talented prospect subjected to poor planning and inconsistent guidance. After one preseason setback, the conversation shifted toward maybe Shedeur isn't ready instead of examining coaching, play design, and preparation. The reality is clear. The question isn't whether Sanders is ready, it's whether the Browns were prepared to develop and support him.
Well, that would be a nice exit strategy because he would come up as doing Shedeur a favor.
I mean, one's got to go, right? One's got to go, to clear this thing up.
At some point, but I'm sorry, I know they don't care. If they were to trade Shedeur Sanders now after that preseason performance and he would go on to be good.
The organization has cycled through quarterbacks for years, and the pattern is unchanged. Blame the player, protect the system, and repeat the same mistakes. Fans are split. Some argue Shedeur Sanders needs time and support, while others treat one rough outing as proof he isn't the answer. That division hides the real problem, the Browns' process. This isn't Shedeur failing, it's the team failing Shedeur. Across the league, successful teams create clear development paths. Kansas City brought Patrick Mahomes along behind a veteran and tailored the offense before handing him the job. Houston committed to CJ Stroud, built around his strengths, and let him grow with consistent direction. Smart teams invest, protect, and show belief. Cleveland did the opposite with Shedeur. Uneven reps, inconsistent protection, and unclear plans. Then question the outcome. That's not development, it's organizational mismanagement.
These players have played a tremendous amount of football. Right. And I remember last year when Bo Nix came out of Oregon, we talked about all the easy throws Oregon creates. Right. The skill, the level of the skilled players that are around him. And then we watched Bo Nix acclimate to the NFL game extremely quickly. I see a lot of those same traits in Dillon Gabriel. He gets the football out of his hands. He takes the throw that's available to him. He plays on time. And part of whether or not you get an opportunity to get on the field is the people that you're competing against. And I don't mean this in any disrespectful way to Shedeur, because I'm not only a fan, it's somebody I want to see succeed.
The Browns will likely present this as part of a deliberate development plan, tough standards, resilience building, and testing a rookie under pressure. In practice, it isn't development. It's a damaging approach that undercuts growth. The organization has not shown a consistent model for nurturing young talent, and Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky highlighted that publicly. After Shedeur Sanders stumbled in a preseason game, the reaction was immediate. Headlines, polarized fan takes, and sweeping conclusions about his readiness. The front office offered little acknowledgement of the conditions he was placed in. Clark's point was direct. You do not evaluate a rookie by how he looks in a setup designed for failure. You evaluate him when he's properly supported. Orlovsky explained how poor coaching choices, protection, sequencing, and role clarity can quickly erode confidence and stall development. The issue was not Sanders' ability, it was Cleveland's process, which appeared disorganized and unprofessional for an NFL operation.
I'm about to unleash about Shedeur Sanders. I just watched what happened to Shedeur Sanders in the Cleveland Browns' third and final preseason game. And I'm outraged, I'm sickened, and I'm saddened. By the way, Shedeur continues to be treated in the National Football League now by those sorry-ass Browns and sorry-ass Kevin Stefanski.
The Cleveland Browns are once again mishandling a promising quarterback. Skip Bayless criticized the organization for failing to develop Shedeur Sanders and for misusing his skill set. He argued that the team's decisions are undermining Sanders' progress and turning a major investment into a cautionary example. Bayless pointed to inconsistent usage, questionable play calling, and a lack of clear direction as key issues limiting Sanders. He said the Browns need a defined development plan and stronger support if they expect Sanders to succeed. Skip Bayless delivered a direct, critical assessment this week. After seeing Shedeur Sanders in a Browns uniform, he argued that Cleveland is mishandling the quarterback and undermining his development. Bayless said the team's approach shows poor planning and inadequate support around Sanders. He dismissed excuses about strategy and emphasized the need for better coaching, deployment, and protection. In his view, the Browns are setting themselves up for problems before the season begins unless they establish a clear plan for Sanders. Given the team's recent decisions, his reaction is understandable. Cleveland has a history of inconsistent quarterback development. Shedeur Sanders is a premium prospect, the son of a Hall of Famer, a proven college performer, and a widely recognized figure. The organization should prioritize his reps, protection, and a clear development plan, not place him behind Dillon Gabriel as if he were a secondary option.
But I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders, and I'm going to tell you why. I think he's being set up to fail. That's right, I'm going to say it.
Okay.
Here we are on national television, right? There's been 11 practices, if I remember correctly. He's been starting against, he's been playing against the third unit. He's fourth on the depth chart. And then suddenly you throw him into the start line, and he hasn't had any reps for the first team at all. Think about that. So you're just going to throw him to the wolves like that, huh? I mean, you know, if he had first team snaps in practice.
Yet here we are. Cleveland has one of the most publicized prospects and is handling him like a depth piece. The broader issue is the franchise's long record of quarterback instability and inconsistent development. That history colors every move they make. When the Browns draft a quarterback, fans don't anticipate a long-term answer. They brace for another reset. Shedeur Sanders should be treated as a priority, not as an afterthought behind Dillon Gabriel.
Let's give him a chance. Let's give him a chance with the play calling. You know you have an offensive line that isn't playing that well. So what do? Why not just play the short game so he can get the ball out of his hands very fast to run a competent goddamn offense? Outside of that, Shedeur has to be better in understanding that the offensive line that you're working with right now is not adequate. Why not allow the players that are competing for a job, in this instance, Shedeur Sanders, to finish off the 2-minute drill?
When Browns fans see another quarterback selected, they brace for another setback. The franchise's recent history, from Johnny Manziel's failed stint to the rocky handling of Baker Mayfield, reflects inconsistent development and short-term decision-making. Against that backdrop, Skip Bayless's reaction to Shedeur Sanders on Cleveland's roster was blunt. He argued the team is already mishandling a premium prospect by treating him as a secondary option instead of a centerpiece for the future. Bayless's position is straightforward. Sanders is not just a name, he brings proven college production, leadership traits, and significant visibility that can strengthen both the offense and the organization's broader profile. Burying him on the depth chart behind Dillon Gabriel signals a lack of a clear development plan and wastes early momentum. Instead, Bayless contends, Cleveland should establish a defined pathway. First-team practice reps, protection and personnel tailored to his strengths, deliberate play calling that accelerates processing, and measured in-game opportunities that build confidence and execution. In his view, the Browns need alignment from the front office to the coaching staff to prioritize Sanders' growth. Continuing to treat him like a depth piece risks repeating the same cycle that has undermined previous quarterbacks. Committing to a coherent plan gives Sanders and the franchise a realistic chance to convert potential into sustained performance.
When he led college football in completion percentage and he threw almost 40 touchdowns for over 4,000 yards, how tall was he? Because they make it seem like he shrunk all of a sudden, RC. Oh, how lively was his arm? Because all I know is somebody did that. Somebody threw for over 4,000 yards, somebody threw for almost 40 touchdowns, and somebody led college football in completion percentage. Now, I'm trying to figure out, what I try to figure out all the time, Mel, is how a guy that hadn't played football in almost 5 months.
Shannon Sharpe has publicly defended Shedeur Sanders and criticized those questioning him. Sanders has earned higher recognition and some fans are responding negatively. Although there's debate about whether he belongs on a second team list, Sharpe maintains that Sanders' career is clearly ascending. Reactions on social media are mixed. Some users are angry, others are surprised, and a few say they anticipated this result. The conversation remains active. When reports confirmed that Shedeur Sanders had been elevated from second team to near top tier status, Shannon Sharpe issued an emphatic response. He delivered a detailed rebuttal to critics, underscoring why Sanders deserved the promotion and directly challenging those who doubted the decision.
I don't think that he was underprepared during these meetings. I don't believe any of these stories that he showed up arrogant and that he was bombing his interviews. I mean, you watch the film, he's on time, he's on point. You watch his interviews, he answers like a 10-year NFL veteran. Like, he's clearly dominating OTAs. It's every single day there's a new report of how well he's doing for the Browns in OTAs. And I mean, you can say what you want, it's just OTAs. Okay, if that's your new narrative, then he's doing exactly what he needs to be doing. He's on point, he's on time, he's getting the respect of his teammates, and he's making plays. So we're gonna see years down the line, something's gonna come out that I don't know what exactly it was, but something will come out.
Critics have been waiting for an opportunity to dismiss Sanders. They labeled him overrated, accused him of benefiting from nepotism, and claimed his profile came only from his last name and polished image. Within their own echo chamber, they cited every game in which he fell short of huge passing numbers as validation of their doubts. Since Sanders has begun receiving formal recognition, criticism has escalated. A wave of self-appointed analysts is dissecting his throwing mechanics and team role, and many online commentators now argue that his promotion reflects deeper problems within the sport. Shannon Sharpe rejected each criticism directed at Shedeur Sanders. During the broadcast, he turned a routine segment into a detailed examination, acting as presenter, interrogator, and fact-checker. Sharpe walked viewers through game film, season statistics, and scouting reports to show why Sanders merited his recent promotion. Whenever a panelist claimed Sanders had not earned the role, Sharpe countered with completion percentages, efficiency ratings under pressure, and documented late-game drives that changed outcomes. He stressed that the backlash was driven less by on-field evidence and more by reluctance to revise earlier opinions. Sharpe argued that critics were upset not because Sanders lacked qualifications, but because his progress contradicted their initial narrative. By the end of the discussion, Sharpe had moved past simple defense and reframed Sanders as a clear example of performance-based advancement, demonstrating that early predictions can be wrong.
Never heard of no Dillon Gabriel or Tyler Shock. What the hell is that? So how is Shedeur Sanders going behind them? I'll tell you how. Collusion. 4 different times they passed on him. How the hell does that happen? 4 rounds. It doesn't happen to a quarterback. We've never seen anything like this before. Shedeur Sanders with the watch. Shedeur Sanders with his bravado. Shedeur Sanders with this supposed arrogance or whatever.
Shedeur Sanders' advancement did not happen by chance. While detractors questioned his resume online, he continued to prepare, attend every practice, and deliver accurate throws under pressure. The contrast between his output and the complaints directed at him has been stark. Some critics even argued the selection committee was, quote, biased toward performance, as if rewarding strong play play were improper. Rumors quickly followed. Certain commentators speculated that a public relations push from the Sanders family must have influenced voters, suggesting everything from coordinated media strategies to alleged favors for coaches. None of these theories addresses the basic point. Sanders earned his promotion through consistent production, poise in the pocket, precise ball placement, and efficient decision-making. Shannon Sharpe highlighted these facts during his response. He noted that Sanders' performance metrics justify the recognition and emphasized that resistance to the move stems more from prior prejudice than from substantive evaluation. For Sharpe, the goal was clear: present the data, challenge unfounded claims, and correct the narrative. The discussion, therefore, became a broader statement about acknowledging merit and abandoning outdated assumption.
Colin Cowherd defend college basketball coaches who have gotten a DUI, come to their defense and say they didn't need to be fired, that they deserve a second chance. But Shedeur Sanders drives 40 miles over the speed limit, gets a one-on-one ticket, and Colin Cowherd comes on his show today and says he's out on Shedeur Sanders. He's seen enough. He can't support him anymore. He can't be in the Shedeur Sanders camp because of this speeding ticket.
Shannon Sharpe addressed commentators who portray constant doubt as expertise. Those who discount strong performances with "we'll see" but declare bust after a single mistake. He noted their belief that progress only counts if an athlete visibly struggles. Sharpe's response was methodical rather than emotional. He presented evidence, cited statistics, and calmly refuted each claim. Following his remarks, several critics began revising or deleting earlier posts, recasting themselves as longtime supporters of Shedeur Sanders despite having questioned him for months. Sharpe insists on accountability, naming specific individuals and dates while requesting public acknowledgement of prior errors. He argues that analysts cannot spend months undermining a player's potential and then quietly adopt a supportive stance once the athlete succeeds.
These are serious, big-time, top-of-the-line playmakers that they have. If you can go 45 to 42 in the fourth quarter because your quarterback set the school record with 510 yards passing. He was flawless. Shedeur is big time. I didn't know for sure, will it translate to the next level of competition? Yes, it might translate to the next level of competition as he can play.
Critics who once claimed Shedeur Sanders was unprepared now hesitate to acknowledge their mistake. They resist retracting earlier comments and struggle to accept that an athlete can succeed without their approval. Sanders continues to share practice clips and game highlights without engaging the debate, while Shannon Sharpe documents every dismissive remark, ready to revisit them on national television. The disapproval did not slow Sanders. It underscored his progress and exposed the gap between perception and performance. As a result, the conversation has shifted. Analysts who doubted him now describe him as undervalued and publish detailed evaluations of his mechanics and game management, suggesting long-standing familiarity with his career. In a matter of weeks, critics have recast themselves as advocates, demonstrating how quickly opinion can change when consistent results leave little room for doubt. Shannon Sharpe signaled that his commentary is not over. He considers Sanders' advancement a positive outcome for every athlete who has been overlooked or criticized for having confidence. Sharpe stressed that analysts do not have the authority to determine who deserves recognition based on personal preference. The reaction to Sanders' promotion, he argued, revealed how quickly opinions can shift once results are undeniable. Sharpe pointed out that many vocal critics became quiet when confronted with objective performance data. This exchange, Sharpe insisted, reached beyond defending a single quarterback. It challenged the practice of dismissing achievements that do not fit familiar narratives. He reminded viewers that success does not require external approval and that consistent talent will surface despite online commentary intended to minimize it. While critics reconsider their positions, Sharpe remains steady, assigning credit to the athlete and allowing the scoreboard to confirm the argument. In his view, the statistics speak clearly enough. Sharpe also emphasized that the intensity of the backlash must be placed in context. College football is a volatile environment where unexpected outcomes are common. Therefore, declaring failure based on incomplete evidence only weakens the credibility of sports analysis. The discussion underscored the need for measured evaluation rather than reactive judgment.
Dak Jackson and him and everybody else that we talked to have said that Shedeur looks good. He looks really good. He looks better. And we got Zach that say Dylan Gabriel ain't even an NFL quarterback.
It's true.
So how is it that this man can't get a rep with the ones, but that non-NFL quarterback can?
We all
what
agree with
sense
that.
does that make?
Some observers now claim that recognizing Shedeur Sanders' strong performance undermines football's traditional standards, even though they previously argued he received coverage only because of his father. Faced with Sanders' current statistics, those critics are searching for explanations that fit their earlier narrative. The data have always been clear, their earlier objections ignored that fact. Shannon Sharpe is openly highlighting this reversal, comparing past negative remarks with Sanders' recent 400-yard games to demonstrate the gap between criticism and evidence. Sharpe did not force these commentators to backtrack, he simply displayed their earlier claims alongside Sanders' results, allowing the contrast to speak for itself. Many observers declared Deion Sanders was finished. They argued that his public style attracted unnecessary attention, that his health had deteriorated too far, and that his coaching career was approaching an abrupt conclusion. They misread his resolve. When speculation intensified, Sanders did not schedule a press conference or issue a formal statement. Instead, he released a short video recorded at his Texas home, walking alongside recording artist Lil Wayne. The footage established two facts. Although Sanders still walks with a limp, he remains active, and he intends to return to the sideline. Reports from USA Today and ESPN confirm that Sanders had temporarily left Colorado to recover from a significant, undisclosed medical condition. He lost 14 pounds and missed several summer practices, leading to widespread debate about his future. Unofficial sources suggested complications related to previous blood clot issues, but no official diagnosis was provided. Throughout Sanders' absence, numerous media outlets framed his situation in crisis language, frequently questioning whether he would coach again. By comparison, when coaches such as Lincoln Riley paused their duties for health or family reasons, coverage emphasized understanding and patience, an imbalance that reflects a common difference in how high-profile black coaches are treated. Sanders' silence was not a retreat, it was a period of recovery. During rehabilitation, he relied on family, faith, and trusted colleagues, yet stayed connected to his program through brief online updates. The video with Lil Wayne demonstrated that he retained strong support from influential friends, countering narratives that portrayed him as isolated or on the verge of retirement. The visual evidence showed that his setback is temporary, and that he remains determined to lead Colorado into the forthcoming season. Since accepting the Colorado position, Sanders has dramatically elevated the program's national standing. He first drew national attention to Jackson State and the broader HBCU football landscape, then moved to Boulder and transformed a one-win team into a central storyline in college athletics. His approach, combining hip-hop culture, direct communication, and open expressions of faith, has challenged conventional expectations for head coach behavior. Each step forward has been met with heightened scrutiny. His time at Jackson State was labeled a publicity stunt, his departure for Colorado was framed as abandoning HBCU culture, and his social media presence has been cast as distraction from traditional coaching responsibility. Critics often magnify Sanders' missteps and question his motives, while comparable actions by other coaches receive neutral or sympathetic coverage. Showings of enthusiasm from Brett Favre and disciplinary intensity from Nick Saban are celebrated as competitive passion, yet Sanders' displays of confidence are frequently labeled arrogance. The discrepancy illustrates deeper biases rather than differences in performance. Sanders' success challenges entrenched expectations of how a college football leader should look, speak, and act, especially a black coach who refuses to downplay his identity. During his convalescence, Sanders maintained close communication with his staff and athletes, reinforcing the standards he had established: discipline, accountability, and belief. The program's daily messaging continued to emphasize preparation and resilience, signaling that Sanders' influence persists even when he is away from campus. Athletes echoed his mantras during workouts, confirming that his leadership extends beyond physical presence. Sanders acknowledges the seriousness of his medical challenge, but has refused to let it define him. He has publicly discussed leaning on scripture and prayer, explaining that his purpose as a mentor, father, and coach extends beyond personal adversity. In that context, the video of him walking in the Texas sun was less a strategic media effort than a straightforward demonstration of continued commitment to his team and mission. Colorado still requires Sanders' vision. Prior to his arrival, attendance was low, national media attention was minimal, and recruiting momentum had stalled. Sanders' leadership brought renewed energy, authentic identity, and higher standards of accountability. Players who previously lacked representation in college football leadership found a coach who shares, affirms, and elevates their cultural background. Sanders supplements conventional coaching priorities, scheme, fundamentals, and execution with empowerment initiatives that cultivate self-confidence and authenticity. As preseason camp approaches, Sanders intends to resume full involvement, even if medical recovery remains ongoing. His presence is expected to restore on-site leadership, stabilize the locker room, and direct media coverage toward on-field progress. For Sanders, the objective extends beyond compiling wins. It includes completing a cultural transformation that expands how success and leadership are defined in modern college football. Those who predict his decline overlook the underlying traits, faith, perseverance, and purpose that have supported Sanders throughout his career. Doubts, rumors, and disproportionate scrutiny have followed him from playing days into coaching, and he has consistently responded with results. His current health setback is another obstacle, not a conclusion. The broader initiative he leads, centered on authenticity, opportunity, and high standards, continues. When Sanders returns to the sideline, it will mark the next stage of a movement he has guided from Jackson State to Boulder. The recent period of quiet has been strategic rather than passive. Instead of defending himself in daily briefings, Sanders focused on rehabilitation, remote program oversight, and family support. Each brief social media message reinforced a consistent theme: faith and preparation. He has articulated gratitude for medical professionals and has reiterated that his mission at Colorado is unfinished. His public references to scripture have been direct but measured, aligning with his long-standing practice of integrating faith into leadership. By walking through his ranch with Lil Wayne, Sanders signaled continuity. The clip underscored that influential supporters remain engaged, that Sanders' broader network values his vision, and that he remains capable of navigating physical challenges. The visible limp was not evidence of imminent retirement. Rather, it documented the reality of ongoing recovery and the resilience with which he approaches each obstacle. Colorado's athletic administration and football staff continue to affirm Sanders' program direction. Recruitment communications cite his established record in fostering cultural relevance and national exposure. Prospective athletes respond to a coach who presents a transparent path to development, both on and off the field. Current players refer to Sanders' coaching points with clarity, citing specific drills and expectations that remain unchanged during his absence. These indicators demonstrate that the core structures Sanders implemented are functioning, and that his return will be an amplification, not a restart. Criticism regarding Sanders' public persona often conflates media style with coaching substance. Analysis from opponents suggests that social media engagement dilutes football preparation, yet Sanders' staffs emphasize time management and delegation. Defensive and offensive coordinators handle in-game adjustments, while Sanders directs overall culture, recruitment, and leadership. He has articulated that visibility serves to amplify program accomplishments and enhance player opportunities, not replace strategic football planning. Some commentary has attempted to reframe Sanders' health issue as evidence that his coaching model is unsustainable. The argument ignores the documented health challenges faced by numerous coaches across levels of competition. For example, college coaches recovering from heart procedures or joint replacements have returned to successful seasons after appropriate medical clearance. Sanders' case follows a comparable trajectory. Medical complications require temporary separation, structured rehabilitation is prioritized, and a managed return is planned. Institutional medical protocols at Colorado dictate clearance requirements. Sanders will meet those before resuming full sideline duties. Colorado's players have expressed public confidence in Sanders' eventual return, citing regular virtual check-ins and continued accountability. Several athletes noted that positional meetings included recorded messages from Sanders reinforcing tactical goals and personal discipline. These details confirm that Sanders has remained actively engaged, albeit remotely, and that team culture remains aligned with his principles. Looking ahead, Colorado's schedule will attract national attention, both for on-field competitiveness and the storyline of Sanders' comeback. Analysts will evaluate how quickly he reestablishes day-to-day rhythm and whether his physical limitations influence practice oversight. Internal planning accommodates gradual escalation of responsibilities, with medical staff and strength and conditioning personnel contributing to phase reintegration. The broader significance of Sanders' return extends beyond Colorado. His visibility continues to challenge prevailing narratives about leadership styles and pathways in college athletics. By prioritizing authenticity, open articulation of faith, and cultural expression, Sanders offers a contrasting template to more conventional models. His eventual recovery and sideline presence will reinforce the argument that diverse leadership profiles can succeed in elite collegiate competition. In summary, rumors of Deion Sanders' coaching demise were premature. Verified reports confirm a substantial but temporary medical setback. He used the time away to focus on health, sustain program engagement, and rely on a support system anchored in family, friends, and faith. His recent public appearance demonstrated active recovery and reaffirmed his intention to resume leadership in Boulder. The forthcoming season will test Colorado on the field, but it will also underscore the durability of Sanders' vision, one that combines competitive ambition with cultural resonance. Observers who continue to question his longevity overlook the resilience and purpose that have defined his career. Sanders' return is imminent, and the movement he leads remains intact.
You can't fire the owner because he can't fire himself. Yeah, someone's head's going to roll, unfortunately, in this situation, and it's probably Stefanski and Barry.
I saw on The Athletic.
I don't think that's fair, by the way. Stefanski, that part.
I agree. I was saying the other day on my podcast that Barry should be fired, and I said I wouldn't fire Stefanski, but a couple of people made the point of saying, well, if you fire the GM, you got to give him a chance to hire his own coach, which is fair.
That's true.
So I would fire Barry. I would hire a new GM. If that GM thinks Kevin Stefanski's a good coach, wants to stick with him.
The situation in Cleveland has escalated with the NFL. Sources indicate GM Andrew Barry is prepared to move on from head coach Kevin Stefanski if he refuses to elevate Shedeur Sanders. The Browns are weighing a major quarterback change. Leadership appears to be aligning behind Sanders and pushing for immediate action. This is a high-stakes decision about control and the team's direction.
I think it's unfair for me to comment in I guess, maybe on behalf of the industry. All I can say is this, the time that we spent with Shedeur, and what he's done throughout his college career is impressive. He's an impressive young man. He's a really good quarterback. Sometimes, fit comes into play. And I'd also say this, there are 4 more rounds of the draft. And then maybe lastly, it's less about where you get picked and what you do after you get picked. That's really the most important thing. Getting to know him over the course of the spring, he has a ton of resolve.
Andrew Barry appears to be at a breaking point. Pressure from fans and within the organization to play Shedeur Sanders is intensifying. Barry is pushing for a move towards Sanders, while head coach Kevin Stefanski remains cautious about altering the depth chart. The divide is clear. One side wants acceleration, the other a measured rollout. The organization is under heavy scrutiny, and the focus has shifted to when, not if, Sanders sees the field.
Has the 4th highest odds of any head coach this season to be fired. He's clearly on the hot seat. It's been a discussion for really a couple years now, dating back to last season's 3-win season. And he's always had kind of hot and cold seasons. And now the sports books are saying he's 4th on the list. Number 1 is Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins, Brian Daboll of the Giants at 2, Shane Steichen at 3, and there is Kevin Stefanski plus 650 to be fired.
This has moved beyond tension to outright stubbornness. Rather than elevating Shedeur Sanders, the staff has chosen Dillon Gabriel. The current depth chart looks less like a forward plan and more like resistance to change. Fans have been clear about who they expect to see, yet the organization keeps delaying. Every week without a real evaluation of Sanders slows development and blurs accountability. Cleveland is choosing a conservative approach when a decisive decision is needed, sending a message of uncertainty to both the locker room and the city.
Now being the 3rd string quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, was that so much was made out of unbelievable. He actually made the team as the 3rd string quarterback. Like that was a big deal. Like that was somewhat of a surprise to a lot of people. He should have been the 1st pick in the draft.
Kevin Stefanski appears to be doubling down to validate his approach. Despite sustained demand from Browns fans to see Shedeur Sanders reflected in chants, merchandise, and constant discussion, he continues to keep Dillon Gabriel in front on the depth chart. The decision functions as an assertion of control rather than a response to momentum. Even with clear signals from the fan base, Stefanski is staying with Gabriel and delaying a full evaluation of Sanders. It is a deliberate choice to maintain his plan and pacing, not to accelerate change. Cleveland is prioritizing continuity over recalibration, keeping any transition to Sanders on hold.
But yeah, I mean, the Browns are in a tough spot. They have wasted. You traded a ton of high draft capital to get Deshaun Watson. You've gotten nothing out of Deshaun Watson and missed an opportunity. Like, who knows who they would have drafted? Now, maybe they would have screwed up those picks and the Browns would still be in bad shape.
Andrew Berry is likely frustrated watching Dillon Gabriel default to conservative throws while the offense stalls. From a football perspective, this appears to be the hill Kevin Stefanski is choosing to stand on. Keeping Gabriel ahead of Shedeur Sanders has limited the unit's explosiveness and prevented a full evaluation of a higher ceiling option. Drives end quickly, field position flips, and momentum is lost while Sanders remains on the sideline. Fan patience is wearing thin. Each ineffective series intensifies criticism and shifts scrutiny toward the coaching staff's criteria for the depth chart. With every additional snap for Gabriel, the decision reads less like an open competition and more like rigid adherence to a plan that isn't producing results. The optics are clear. A dynamic quarterback sits while a cautious approach keeps the offense in neutral. If this continues, accountability questions will grow inside and outside the building. What performance benchmarks keep Gabriel ahead of Sanders? When will Sanders receive first-team reps in live situations to allow a fair comparison? The front office must decide whether to preserve continuity or pivot toward a timely assessment of Sanders. The longer the current approach stays in place, the more it signals stubbornness rather than adaptation, and the more pressure mounts to realign the plan with on-field output.
I honestly see it happening if the Browns lose a bunch of games. Like if they get 5 wins or less, I see the report coming out now that Stefanski will be fired. I don't want it to happen. I want the Browns to be good, win a bunch of games. I think that they're going to be a team that is slept on and can at least get 7 wins, which is why if they don't, I see Stefanski getting all the blame for that, and there'll be a new coach in Cleveland. Because their players, to me, are there once again. We've talked about the incredible rookie class.
The approach in Cleveland lacks consistency. One week, Andrew Berry signals he wants Shedeur Sanders on the field. The next, Dillon Gabriel gets the reps and the plan stays conservative. Through it all, Kevin Stefanski shows limited urgency despite pressure on his job security. Fans are asking for an offense that can push the ball, change field position, and produce points. Instead, the unit leans on short throws and cautious sequencing. Gabriel's play keeps the ceiling low and momentum static, while a full evaluation of Sanders is postponed. The result is growing frustration and a clear disconnect between the front office, coaching staff, and expectations in the stadium.
The NFL tried to teach him and his father a lesson. You don't act like that. You don't talk like that before a draft. We'll show you how our game is played. We will watch you plummet all the way. I think he would have gone undrafted except for that owner in Cleveland. And he is the key to everything because he is something of an against the grain maverick owner. He's kind of a wannabe Jerry.
Fan speculation is growing. Some believe Kevin Stefanski lacks confidence in Shedeur Sanders. Others think he's prioritizing Dillon Gabriel for reasons unrelated to performance. A more extreme view claims Stefanski is manipulating outcomes to secure a buyout. Whatever the motive, the risk is clear. This approach is straining his relationship with GM Andrew Berry and alienating the fan base. Pressure is rising, Berry's patience is running out, and supporters have shifted from requests to demands. If the current plan continues, calls for a change in quarterback and accountability will intensify.
I view things as I got time. I got time to be able to grow and mature, and be able to understand the ins and outs of the defenses and be able to get the good insight from the vets in the room. So I look at it as, a plus, and whenever, it's time for me to play.
Shedeur Sanders rolled into Browns camp and instantly made the whole practice feel like a recess pickup game. NFL vets suddenly looked like they'd forgotten the playbook and were just trying to keep up.
With that being said, I see some balls coming out of Shedeur Sanders at that camp, and I'm like, kind of looks like a guy.
Yeah, I'm ready.
He can sling it.
Ready to I see him, some of the veterans, how they talk to him, mic'd up, see what he's doing in the community.
Talking about Njoku there?
joke like that. But you once you see, different little interactions and things like that, I know he has the talent. We'll see. It'll be a competition that usually brings the best out of guys, especially young guys. So I'm interested to see how that quarterback situation.
Right after Shedeur Sanders tightened his cleats and the Browns settled in for what they figured was a routine camp day, the whole vibe tilted sideways. No blazing comet, no UFO touching down at midfield, just a swagger-charged quarterback striding in like he'd crashed the wrong league and thought, yeah, I'll stick around and run this show. The Browns had no clue what storm was rolling in. You'd expect an NFL team to do a quick scout, maybe pull up a highlight reel or two, but nope. They greeted Shedeur with a shrug, only to watch him seize the field on snap one and run the whole operation like a seasoned pro.
First and foremost, he's been the best quarterback in camp. Now look, Joe Flacco ain't had many opportunities. There was a whole day I saw he didn't throw the ball at all. Here's my theory on the situation. They already know who's starting in the number 2 is. They already know. Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders is already locked up. You're missing the boat, people. You're missing the boat. Your boy, Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, oh, they're fighting.
Shedeur didn't merely clock in, he hijacked the session. One moment he's loosening his arm, the next he's roasting veteran QBs like faded names on busted draft boards. Defensive coordinators everywhere had the same gut punch reaction. Uh-oh. His pocket poise? Straight disrespectful. His timing? Psychic. And every pass left his hand like it was laser guided to its mark. While Shedeur Sanders was slicing up routes, the Browns' secondary looked less like an NFL backfield and more like a gaggle of dads sprinting through a Saturday fun run. Big on enthusiasm, short on closing speed. Coaches fought the urge to slam the emergency horn. Players traded wide-eyed, "Are we serious?" stares, and someone even double-checked that a hidden camera crew wasn't about to pop out of the tunnel. But nope, this was pure Shedeur, half cold-blooded surgeon, half highlight factory. He wasn't dropping a casual "I'm here," he was crafting a masterclass. From the first rep, the tempo changed. Shedeur Sanders accepted the snap with steady footwork, diagnosed the Browns' single high shell, and delivered a tight window seam route that forced the free safety to recover late. Throughout the period, he manipulated leverage with quick shoulder fakes, moved through full field progressions, and released on time from a balanced base, consistently putting the ball on his receiver's upfield shoulder. Cleveland's coverage struggled on multiple fronts. Safeties hesitated between deep half responsibilities and underneath support, creating voids at 15 to 20 yards. Cornerbacks and off-man were caught in trail position when Sanders used rhythm throws on 3-step drops, while those who tried press technique had their inside hand neutralized by his receivers' outside releases. Linebackers widened to match shallow crossers, leaving the middle hook unguarded for pivot routes and option digs. One corner attempted a line of scrimmage jam. Sanders immediately adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade, releasing the ball before the break and rendering the press ineffective. Over the session, he showcased pocket discipline, reclimbing to maintain throwing lanes rather than drifting, and finished with a series of anticipatory throws against cover 2 cloud, fitting vertical outs between the flat and deep half defenders. Sanders' combination of rapid post-snap processing, precise ball placement, and pocket efficiency exposed coverage mismatches at every level and highlighted communication gaps in the Browns secondary. By mid-session, the Browns defensive staff clearly recognized their calls were outmatched. Every adjustment, a roll to cover 6, a simulated pressure, a late rotate to 2 high, was neutralized once Shedeur Sanders confirmed the post-snap picture. Routes that had taken weeks to script were beaten by timing and location. Comeback set at 12 yards broke open before the corner's transition. Slot seam-outs dotted the void between the flat and deep half defender, and boundary receivers beat press with quick hand techniques, receiving the ball before the trail man could recover. Sanders' command was methodical. He used cadence to freeze plug blitzes, re-ID'd the mic when linebackers sugared the A-gaps, and maintained a firm base so he could reset and fire without resetting his feet. His receivers benefited from that rhythm. Top of the stem, eyes back, ball delivered on their upfield shoulder, allowing immediate transition to YAC. The Browns front tried a late stunt to compress the pocket. Sanders climbed 2 steps, re-spotted the shallow crosser, and delivered in stride, turning a potential sack into a 20-yard gain. What stood out most was how little ramp-up Sanders needed. From his first series, he processed full-field concepts at tempo, cycling through progression reads without hitching. The poise under interior pressure, consistency in ball placement, and ability to manipulate zone defenders left the Browns' coordinated disguise packages ineffective and forced them into static coverage by the end of the period. In short, Sanders' efficient mechanics, rapid processing, and anticipatory accuracy rendered Cleveland's defensive game plan ineffective at every level, from pre-snap disguise to post-snap spacing.
Imagine there's many people that think Dillon Gabriel's a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. I don't care where they were drafted. If the Browns are the one team that thinks that, then I'm going to suspect it's not true. They don't know what
listen,
They've been on every quarterback evaluation for 30 years.
Right.
I never root against anybody.
Yeah.
But I'd be surprised if Dillon Gabriel's ever a legitimate starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I'd be surprised. I just don't think.
Well, then it is a wasted pick because you took him in the top 100.
Yeah, but potentially.
Yeah.
May get away with it because of Shedeur.
An edge rusher chirped at Shedeur Sanders between snaps, hoping to shake his rhythm. On the very next play, Sanders answered with a 30-yard laser, a deep dig from the boundary side that split the single high safety and the trailing corner. He hit the top of a 5-step drop, kept a firm base, and delivered on time to the receiver's outside shoulder, turning what should have been a routine rep into a sudden change explosive. From that moment on, every coverage wrinkle the Browns tried, rotating from cover 3 to quarter half, flashing a Tampa 2 shell, mugging both A-gaps, was met with a precise counter. When corners pressed, Sanders adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade. When safeties widened, he checked to a glance post. When linebackers bailed, he found the running back on a delayed option out of the backfield. Even late simulated pressures couldn't move him off his spot. He simply climbed, reset his feet, and fired. As Cleveland's defenders rotated through checks, Sanders manipulated them with cadence and eye discipline. He froze weak side safeties long enough to create intermediate windows, then feathered the ball into those lanes before help could arrive. When the Browns finally dropped 7 and matched every route, Sanders tucked the ball and converted 2 separate 3rd and 6 situations on the ground, reminding everyone that his mobility is as calculated as his arm. By the end of the session, the defensive coordinator's call sheet looked obsolete. Sanders had neutralized blitz looks, exposed spacing issues in zone, and forced the unit into static base coverage just to survive the period. It wasn't a camp drill anymore. It was a clinic on timing, processing speed, and controlled aggression, delivered snap after snap by a quarterback who never needed a warm-up lap to own the field.
They never planned on taking him. The problem is, like Ocho Cinco said, you got somebody that has endeared himself to the locker room. And guess what? The difference between him and Tim Tebow, the biggest one, is he can play. He can throw the ball. Tim Tebow running around being an H-back. He can throw the ball. And he's done everything he needs to do. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't rocking the boat. He ain't mad about the reps. He ain't mad about none of that. All the people out there want to see is this, like Tyler said earlier. We want to see what he can do with Jerry Jeudy.
That's it.
I want to see what he can do with David Njoku. I want to see him with Junkins. I want to see him with the first running backs. If you are cooking, if you are beating down the doors with the 3s and 4s, guess what? You deserve more.
From the first team period on, Cleveland's secondary looked a step slow. A deep third safety hesitated on a post-snap rotation, leaving Shedeur Sanders free to climb the pocket and fire a 22-yard out that arrived before the defender could plant and drive. The supporting cast around him, players fighting for roster spots, not Pro Bowl invites, benefited from his command. Sanders used tempo to control the defensive front, altered protections at the line, and located throwing lanes so quickly that one receiver didn't register the catch until he crossed the goal line. As the Browns tried new personnel groups, coverage busts multiplied. Starters slipped out for hamstring stretches while rookies rotated in, only to find the ball arriving on their blind side before they'd completed a midpoint squeeze. On a later 3rd and long, Cleveland finally closed the interior rush lanes, compressing the pocket with 3 defenders. Sanders pivoted through the traffic, stepped into a narrow escape window, and, without resetting his shoulders, whipped a no-look pass to the boundary curl for a fresh set of downs. The throw turned a potential sack into an explosive play and left the coaching staff scrambling for answers.
The people who are fascinated by Shedeur for whatever reason, whether it's his play, I guess, last year was kind of fun. If you're just like a guy who grew up like loving Deion Sanders and passed that love on down to your kids, I can see why you're like that. The one thing I will give them is you're looking at this quarterback room. If you're a fan of Shedeur and say, why can't he go beat Dillon Gabriel or Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett? So I do understand that part of it, right? Because why not? Why couldn't he be the Brown starter in October or November?
That looks like a quarterback room where everyone will get a chance to start.
Shedeur is lighting it up in practice every day. You're not even a half bit curious to see what he could do with the ones. That makes no sense. And then on top of all of that, you got players going on podcasts and talking to people in the media saying this guy is really good. Like, this guy is legit. So even your peers respect you enough. How is it that the coaches can't see that? It always starts with the players, where the player's like, hey, you see that? You seen that pass he threw?
The Cleveland Browns were taken by surprise when quarterback Shedeur Sanders stepped in for first-team snaps, asserting control of the drill and instantly highlighting deficiencies across the rest of the room. His confident command forced coaches to pause practice clips, reevaluate progressions, and consider immediate adjustments to the depth chart. Within minutes, discussions spread throughout the facility and online forums as fans weighed what Sanders' showing means for the current starters. The organization now faces an urgent, data-driven decision on whether Sanders should move up permanently. Shedeur Sanders arrived at Browns practice, took several first-team reps, and the entire quarterback group immediately felt the pressure. Coaches erased the whiteboard and reviewed their plans. Staff members exchanged concerned comments, and observers began asking whether Sanders was positioned to assume a larger role.
Tony, every year we see at least 1 to 2 teams. They were in last place in their division the year before. No one thought they'd be good, and then they were good. It almost seems like no one's even assuming the Browns can be that, but we see it happen every year. And I get the quarterback stuff, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. The Browns are trying to run the football, play good defense, not turn the ball over in the passing game, and try and take advantage when they can, correct? That's what they're trying to do.
That was the 2020 offense.
The Cleveland Browns are still searching for stability at quarterback. Deshaun Watson is yet to deliver consistent starter-level production that justifies his contract, and each game renews doubts about whether he can regain peak form. Behind him, rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson shows promise but remains inexperienced and unpolished. Coaches are evaluating alternatives each week and may need to adjust the depth chart if progress stalls. The roster around them is built to contend now, so ongoing uncertainty under center is increasingly costly.
As we talk about, we do believe in best player available. We do believe in positional value, and we didn't necessarily expect him to be available in the in the 5th round, and so we love adding competition to every position room and adding him to compete with the guys that are already in there. We felt like that was the appropriate thing to do.
The Browns quarterback group is unsettled. Deshaun Watson has yet to provide the reliable, high-level play his contract demands, while rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson remains promising but unpolished. Depth behind them consists mostly of veterans whose experience lies more in holding clipboards than leading offenses. The coaching staff needs an immediate answer, not a 3-year development project. Shedeur Sanders enters as that potential solution. At Colorado, he passed for more than 3,200 yards despite working behind one of college football's poorest offensive lines, consistently demonstrating poise, quick processing, and accurate ball placement under heavy pressure. Film shows steady reads and disciplined footwork, traits that offset concerns that his profile is built on family name or media attention. Cleveland viewed the signing as a low-risk, high-reward move. Early in camp, Sanders received a handful of first-team snaps intended merely as an evaluation. Those plays quickly changed practice tempo. The ball came out on time, receivers hit their landmarks, and the defense struggled to adjust. Coaches immediately expanded the review using phrases such as evaluate every option, an indication that the depth chart was no longer fixed. Watson sensed the scrutiny. Thompson-Robinson increased his urgency. Within minutes, competition in the quarterback room intensified. Sanders repeated that performance in subsequent sessions. His footwork remained clean, progression sharp, and throws firm and precise. Each strong rep forced staff to reassess the plan to keep him buried on the developmental track. The broader context magnifies the pressure. Cleveland's roster is built to contend now. Fans are weary of quarterback turnover, and the front office cannot afford another costly misstep under center. Around the league, rookie passers rarely wait multiple seasons anymore. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and even late pick Brock Purdy established that precedent. If Watson opens the regular season and struggles, public calls for Sanders will grow, especially if the rookie flashes in preseason. Alternatively, another team could attempt to acquire him if Cleveland hesitates to elevate his role. Each scenario underscores the same reality. Sanders' emergence has turned a routine camp evaluation into a critical decision point for the franchise.
And we saw Dillon Gabriel go 11-11 with the first team, Shedeur Sanders go 11-11 with the second unit. So that was really the big wrinkle today.
Yes, and of course, it was the first time that we have seen Shedeur Sanders get any of those coveted 11-on-11 reps. Of course, again, it wasn't with the first team offense or against the first team defense, but it's progress. And that means that he's going in the right direction, that the arrow is pointing up. He's coming up the learning curve. So that's good for him. And I actually thought just overall, he had a better day than Dylan had today. He completed more passes. He was more on point. In fact, in that 11-on-11 period, he threw a near touchdown.
Desperation can push franchises toward aggressive decisions, especially when their quarterback options appear unconvincing or outdated. One scenario now emerging is that Sanders earns enough confidence to take full preseason reps with the starters, forcing Cleveland to revisit a depth chart it believed was settled at the beginning of July. His practices demonstrate that the excitement around him is grounded in measurable performance. Accurate, high-velocity passes against first-team defenses, and confident command of the huddle. Each strong outing also heightens league-wide interest. Rival scouts adjust evaluations, and general managers revisit their notes, aware that a viable young quarterback may soon become available. Inside the facility, the personnel staff must balance short-term results with long-term roster planning, knowing that an early move could reshape salary cap allocations and locker room dynamics. The pressure on Watson and Thompson Robinson escalates accordingly. Both must produce visible progress to maintain their current roles. Cleveland's recent history shows how quickly promising quarterback situations can devolve into controversy. The franchise has turned potential breakthroughs into organizational turmoil before, so observers remain cautious about how this competition will unfold.
You first, when you take a look at both of these QBs, who had the most impressive start so far in the preseason?
Well, to me, it was Shedeur. I didn't see any interceptions when he was out there. You see anything like that? I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Dylan Gabriel did a bad job. I was impressed with the brother, but I'm going to go with Shedeur. You know, the pressure was on him. The spotlight was on him.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just call out Dylan Gabriel. He held him accountable and made him rethink his comments. The moment Dylan Gabriel spoke and went after Shedeur Sanders, it wasn't a minor slip. He crossed the line and stepped directly into Stephen A. Smith's wheelhouse. And Smith answered with a clear, direct response that left no room for misinterpretation.
The comparisons were emanating from the media more so than anybody else. And that's what I think, that's exactly who I think he was directing his comments towards. Having said that, Dylan Gabriel, respectfully, it was stupid. A very dumb comment to make. First of all, let me tell you something right now. In every walk of life, far beyond the parameters of a football field.
This wasn't casual sports commentary, it was a decisive critique. Dylan Gabriel's comments were taken apart by Stephen A. Smith with clear, direct points. Gabriel, a quarterback with solid stats but limited top-level achievements, chose to take a public shot at Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur, who has handled sustained media scrutiny and on-field expectations, became the target of an unnecessary criticism. Smith responded by challenging Gabriel's standing to make that claim, and by defending Sanders on the facts. The outcome was clear. Gabriel overreached, and Sanders didn't deserve the hit.
Dan Orlovsky would sit up here in comparison to Shedeur Sanders, who did no such thing, and say, hey, thought he looked better. I got to give him the edge here. I thought it wasn't bad. A pick six and a fumble, and we can get over fumbles. Have you heard anybody say that? I know it's possible. Have you heard anybody say, get over?
Stephen A. Smith responded immediately. As soon as Dylan Gabriel made his comments about Shedeur Sanders, Smith delivered a clear, point-by-point critique that drew national attention across the NCAA media cycle. Dylan Gabriel has a reputation as a good quarterback, not a dominant one. He can post strong numbers against opponents like Tulsa, but his performance has been inconsistent when the stakes and competition rise to playoff level.
Well, those who produce get treated differently than those who don't. What he said echoes the mentality of all of America practically, and most certainly the world, as we see things being globalized more and more every day. It was a stupid, idiotic, immature comment, because clearly you were feeling the heat because a lot of people was talking about how Shedeur should be QB.
Dylan Gabriel is a capable quarterback, but not a standout. Even so, he chose to talk down to Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback who has navigated constant scrutiny and pressure and still represents the future of a program that was struggling before he arrived. The comparison was weak. The criticism was unnecessary. Stephen A. Smith recognized that and dismantled Gabriel's argument with a clear, direct response.
How the Browns react to this, how the locker room reacts to this,
how Shedeur reacts to this, because it was a clear shot at Shedeur. But let's say Dylan Gabriel's talking about the media. How could you be a brand new quarterback in the NFL and the first time you get behind a mic after your first game, you throw the media under the bus? That's arrogance.
Stephen A. Smith excels in moments like this. When Dylan Gabriel made his remarks about Shedeur Sanders, Smith responded with a focused, direct critique. He questioned Gabriel's standing to make that claim, noting that Gabriel has transferred between programs and has not been a Heisman finalist. Without theatrics, Smith laid out why Gabriel's resume doesn't justify taking public shots at Sanders. Smith's point was clear. Targeting Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback central to his program's future and consistently under intense scrutiny, was misplaced. Gabriel's criticism lacked the substance to support it, and Smith methodically showed why.
Today on his 42nd
I want you to be meaner.
birthday. That's number one. Number two, after the game, the Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski said there was a mix-up in the routes and that players were in the area that they shouldn't have been.
Look at Stephen A's face. Look at Stephen A's face. Look at his face.
Stephen A.
The strength of Stephen A. Smith's response was that he didn't just address Gabriel's remarks. He challenged the image around him. Dylan Gabriel often presents himself as an overlooked contender ready to surprise. But the reality is that his profile hasn't commanded broad attention. It's a clear reminder that not every opinion carries equal weight. In defending Shedeur Sanders, Stephen A. was direct and precise. Shedeur isn't just a quarterback. He is Deion Sanders' son, which subjects him to scrutiny far beyond anything Gabriel has faced. Even under that pressure, Shedeur has maintained his composure, shown confidence, and delivered in key moments that helped revive a program many had written off.
Stupidity, all of it. I thought it was a clear shot at Shedeur due to the fact that his Oregon coach threw a shot at Coach Prime and Shedeur during their meeting at Colorado last year. But you know what? The cream rises to the top. Let's see what happens this week. I see a lot of the media talking about they think it was about the media and not about Shedeur. And I think that's a chess move.
For Dylan Gabriel to take shots at Shedeur Sanders was a miscalculation. Stephen A. Smith made the mismatch clear. Gabriel's attempt to shame Sanders was unnecessary and counterproductive. You don't target Deion Sanders' son when Deion has turned Colorado into primetime television. It underscored that Dylan Gabriel has often played with a chip on his shoulder because the spotlight hasn't followed him. He has been around long enough to compile numbers but not to earn broad respect. That's why going after Shedeur was misguided. Sanders, despite ups and downs, drives headlines. Gabriel's most notable headlines have been his transfers. Stephen A. Smith pressed that point without hesitation, challenging Gabriel's standing and leaving his argument looking like a forced throw that turns into a pick six.
You know what? Still needs to thank me a little bit more for that restaurant I treated him and his family to, because it was big time, and stop embarrassing me by going places and trying to use coupons. That's how pathetic he is. The point is that a pick six and a fumble is usually considered a bad day.
Stephen A. Smith didn't need to raise his voice to make the point. He presented Dylan Gabriel as a player whose talk outpaces his resume and defended Shedeur Sanders with clear comparisons. That's why he called Gabriel out so directly. The comparison wasn't just unfair, it was forced. Now look at Gabriel's record. The numbers are solid and he can win against average defenses, but the resume lacks defining markers. There's no sustained Heisman contention, no late season surge that reshaped the national picture, and no postseason moment that cements a legacy. The track record reflects steady production, not top-tier impact. That's the gap Smith underscored. Gabriel's criticism of Shedeur Sanders wasn't supported by what he has accomplished, while Sanders continues to carry a program under constant scrutiny.
Let's see someone who step up and make some plays out there.
Ain't no way.
Gabriel
Ain't no way. He's not built like that. No way.
And this one is picked off and going back the other way.
Oh my God, why did he stop playing?
Now it's a foot race. And that is that.
They told me bust out my AP, perfect timing. H-shot, we about to get legendary. Shedeur star the next game, baby. Shout out Dylan, though, you know what I'm saying? Bro, I love you, my heart. What am I bigger than cheese, bro? You know what I'm saying? But Shedeur got it.
Shedeur Sanders is a national brand who draws viewers for both performance and result. Dillon Gabriel's attempt to diminish him read as resentment. And Stephen A. Smith called out the insecurity and lack of awareness directly. Colorado under Deion Sanders is prime time, and Shedeur sits at the center of that spotlight. If Gabriel expected the sports world to agree while he took a shot at Shedeur, he misread the moment. Smith dismantled the argument and questioned the credibility behind it. Gabriel will move on. He'll keep playing, give interviews, and have fans, but this exchange will trail his media profile as a reminder of a misstep. It's a clear example of a resume that doesn't justify taking public aim at a quarterback carrying that level of scrutiny and responsibility.
For the Cleveland Browns preseason game today is that the way that some white folks watched Shedeur Sanders last week is the way that some black folks were watching Dillon Gabriel today. And it's not Dillon Gabriel for Dillon Gabriel's sake. Most folks don't have a problem with Dillon Gabriel. It's what he represents, which is the disrespect of a black person for no other apparent reason than they are a confident black person.
Dillon Gabriel thought he was aiming up. Instead, he was placed back among quarterbacks who are good but not great. Stephen A. Smith made the central point. Dillon Gabriel doesn't shape the conversation. Sports are about narrative as much as numbers, and Gabriel's story doesn't move the culture, while Shedeur Sanders does. Smith highlighted that contrast clearly. By the end, Gabriel's credibility had taken a measurable hit. The critique was decisive and sent a broader message to any player considering public shots at Shedeur Sanders. If you step into that debate, you will be held to a higher standard and your resume will be tested. Dillon Gabriel learned that the hard way.
So before your final year at Miami, there's a lot of conversations revolved around Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, I'm assuming you guys have a great relationship. Some of the clips you've seen and stuff like that. What is it like for you to have like this rivalry with Shedeur?
I don't have a rivalry with him. That's my boy. So at the end of the day, this whole process, we thought me and him were going to be 1 and 2 the whole time. Whether he's 1, I'm 2, whether I'm 1, he's 2. And so that's just always been, our mindset. It didn't go that way. I thought he was one of the better quarterbacks in the draft as well, even throughout college. A lot of stuff out there on him ain't really, the truth, just because they spin it different ways. Like they spin stuff about me different ways. But I mean, when he gets his chance, become a starter, I know he's gonna make the most of it. And I'm ready to get back to work with him, after the season, talk some more stuff to him.
Cam Ward directly challenged the uneven standards applied to Shedeur Sanders, calling them inconsistent and unfair. By insisting that performance, not politics, guide evaluation, he shifted the discussion from one player to a league-wide problem. Sanders' treatment now serves as a test of how the NFL supports and evaluates emerging quarterbacks.
I feel a special relationship with him, especially me. First getting to know him 5 years ago when I started working with him. But it didn't surprise me because he's a good quarterback. It doesn't give a lot of credit that he deserves. Especially the plays that he made in Colorado. A lot of quarterbacks in the country are making those plays. So when he gets this opportunity, I'm pretty sure having soon today that he'll make sure he'll make plays on the field.
Cam Ward's public challenge to the treatment of Shedeur Sanders brought the issue into clear view. For months, discussion around Sanders has centered on his profile, major compensation, a prominent Nike deal, and the expectation to stabilize a struggling franchise. Rather than a standard evaluation of a top prospect, he has faced sustained skepticism from analysts, fans, and league voices. Ward's comments underscored that the standards being applied to Sanders diverge from those used with other rookies. By stating it directly, he did more than support another quarterback. He identified a broader problem in how the league responds to young players with significant visibility. The takeaway is direct. Assessments should reflect on-field performance and development, not external narratives.
A generational talent. I'm gonna prove him right. I'm gonna prove him right. Don't worry. Oh my God. An article came out today. I'm generational. So I guess it's article versus article. I like that you think that, man. But we all know the truth. What? Trav gonna be first?
You generation, I'm legendary.
That's cool. We can be legendary. Legendary, get their ass.
We'll start doing it in like 5 minutes.
Shedeur Sanders entered the league with more than a playbook. He brought a public brand, a family legacy, and expectations unusual for a first-year quarterback. Before his first regular season throw, he was already positioned at the center of attention. Rather than assess him on that reality and his on-field ability, many voices reduced him to marketing, treating visibility as proof of hype instead of performance. Cam Ward pushed back on that framing. His point was simple: judge Sanders by the same criteria applied to other rookies. With Sanders' resume, production, leadership, and composure, most first-year quarterbacks would be discussed as long-term cornerstones. The evaluation should be consistent, focused on development and results, not perception.
This is the process with Shedeur, who I know is a buddy of yours, and how do you think both of you guys will end up doing in the league?
I think we'll both end up being one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I just think the work that me and him are willing to put in, the relationship we have to constantly compete each and every day, to better our craft, for ourselves. I just think it's going to end up paying off for us in the long run.
You guys kid each other about who's going first and how much that matters to you?
Yeah, we play around, we joke around with it. Really don't mean nothing. The draft pick will never mean anything. At the end of the day, you got to show whether you can prove each and every Sunday. You can't just do it 1 year.
Disrespect shows up in two patterns. First, Shedeur Sanders is repeatedly framed through his father, Deion Sanders, as if lineage erases his own work. Discussion drifts to pedigree instead of what the film shows. Second, his visibility is treated with suspicion. His audience reach, partnerships, and ability to lift ratings are labeled hype rather than recognized as value. Instead of acknowledging that he drives demand and expands the stage for his team, critics call it an unfair edge. The result is a skewed evaluation. Star power is held against him while on-field production gets pushed aside. The standard should be consistent. Assess the tape and the development, not the last name or the attention it brings.
Well, Ward were microfacts.
Cam Ward's remarks went beyond defending Shedeur Sanders. They confronted how the league manages star power. The reality is simple. The NFL markets visibility, but resists it when a player doesn't follow the expected script. Rookies are supposed to be quiet, deferential, and grateful for limited leverage. Sanders arrived with leverage, brand reach, major endorsements, and confidence. And that presence was recast as entitlement. Instead of treating those factors as earned advantages, much of the commentary used them to diminish him. Ward called out that contradiction. The same influence the league sells to audiences is criticized when a young player exercises it. His point is a standards problem, not a personality dispute. Evaluate Sanders on his preparation, leadership, and results. Don't penalize him for having a platform or for using the leverage that the modern NFL itself helps create.
Now it sounds like the Cleveland Browns are going to all but imprison Shedeur Sanders in the football sense of a very talented rookie quarterback who obviously needs reps, needs an opportunity, and who now, barring some miraculous luck, will not get the opportunity to play in a single real game. I'm sure many around the NFL are celebrating as we speak. They are chuckling about this. Many in the NFL wanted to teach Shedeur and his daddy.
Cleveland became the center of the conversation. With Shedeur Sanders attached to a major Nike partnership, the expectation was straightforward. He should be given real game reps. The Browns instead leaned on Joe Flacco as the default choice, treating stability as the safer path while sidelining a quarterback with clear cultural and commercial pull. Each week Sanders didn't see the field, scrutiny grew. Commentary questioned the value of his contract environment and relevance, and fan debate shifted from development to doubt. That wasn't measured evaluation. It was a delay framed as prudence that eroded confidence in the process. Cam Ward reset the terms of the debate. He pointed to an uneven standard. When veterans or other young players secure significant endorsements, it's considered smart business. When Sanders does it at scale, it's recast as ego or hype. Even the scope of his off-field agreements became ammunition against him rather than evidence of market demand. Ward's position is simple. Use one standard. Assess Sanders on preparation, decision-making, and progression, not on discomfort with his platform. Treat visibility as an asset, not a disqualifier. The issue isn't attitude or branding, it's the consistency of the evaluation. Ward called it directly. The treatment has been unequal, and it should be corrected by aligning opportunity with performance criteria.
Fans need to recognize there's not a team in the league he'd start for. Not one. That's not ridiculous, that's not unfair, that's not a vast conspiracy.
Shedeur Sanders fans are Angel Reese fans. They're just fair weather fans who don't really give a fuck about the sport. Most of them are just Deion fucking groupies that followed him when he went to fucking Colorado, just like Angel Reese's fans had never watched basketball prior to her playing at LSU, and they followed her to the WNBA and don't know shit about the sport. That's it. Now Dion fucking groupies are running around acting like, oh, this is payback to his dad.
The timing is pivotal. Shedeur Sanders isn't trying to blend into the league's background. He's shaping the agenda. He drives debate segments, fuels short-form highlights, and moves merchandise at a pace most rookies never approach. By the metrics that define modern attention, he is the draw. Yet, a segment of observers continues to undercut him, not because of shortcomings on tape, but because of discomfort with how prominent he already is. Cam Ward put words to what many could see. Coverage around Sanders has been filtered through reaction to his visibility, rather than a clear read of his performance and growth. The market has already weighed in. Demand is real, not manufactured. Nike's record-level rookie endorsement aligned with that reality, signaling long-term value and cultural reach. This exposes a core contradiction. The NFL depends on star power to sell tickets, fill stadiums, and boost ratings, but it resists stars who set terms on their own. Visibility is celebrated until a player exercises it. The fix is straightforward. Apply one standard. Evaluate Sanders on preparation, decision-making, and results, and treat his platform as the asset it is. If the league benefits from his presence, its evaluation practices should reflect that same reality, consistently and without penalty for scale. Shedeur Sanders does not depend on league promotion. He established his platform before the NFL and continues to expand it on his own terms. That autonomy challenges the status quo. Cam Ward's support was more than a defense of a teammate. It was a warning that if the league holds to outdated expectations, it risks falling behind the very players who drive audience attention and revenue. Claims that Sanders lacks real popularity ignore measurable facts. A large, active following, consistent merchandise demand, and sustained coverage across major outlets. Doubts about his standing as a quarterback overlook his college production and growth indicators. The pattern is familiar. Efforts to minimize him increase his reach. Each skeptical headline widens the spotlight, and each dismissive take creates more engagement. You cannot reduce a player built for visibility by arguing he should be less visible. The practical outcome is the opposite. Scrutiny becomes signal. Sanders is not merely enduring criticism, he is turning it into momentum, converting attention into leverage on and off the field.
Honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7. They're throwing dimes. In practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna. Then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We've seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised, and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
you got a problem.
You have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised when you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback. You do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelsey's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelsey's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap usage, and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
I have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam's strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelce's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel.